Welcome back, and well, it's time for us now to have that interview that I have been talking about. I have the chair of the Nssf board, and that is General Retired Dr. Julius Karangi. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And we are here at the KICC, courtesy of the Nssf, as they hold their annual general meeting. Let's start, sir, with maybe just a general overview of Nssf for the benefit of somebody who may not really understand fully what the Nssf is there for and what it does for us as a country.
Thank you, Michael. I think I would like to start by describing the pensions industry in this country, because we are not the only pensions fund
Correct.
in the industry. As we speak, we are talking about an industry of about 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings, and with a total membership of slightly over 1,400 pension schemes. Out of that broad picture, we control like 20% of that pensions industry. So we are the largest. We are the largest pension scheme in the country, indeed in the region.
In the region.
So we control just like over 20%, and it's a very competitive industry as we speak in this country. Some of them are small, medium, but we are the largest.
You're the largest.
Yeah.
And maybe just to fully understand what gap the Nssf feels in terms of taking care of the citizenry.
Well, our stated mission and vision is to provide social security to Kenyans in old age. Social security here to mean the basic needs of a human being like food, shelter, Medicare, so that your lifestyle is not degraded post your working life, or in summary, just to ensure that there is no pain in old age. And that is what collectively we refer to as social security.
Correct.
So we are mandated to do exactly that. And that which we do or we don't do is with a view to providing social security in old age. And when I say old age, it does not mean when you are 80 or 90. It's when you stop working.
When you stop working.
And when your body is weak, you don't have people to rely on. Old age, particularly in this country, is a big concern.
Absolutely.
Old age poverty in this country is a big concern.
And maybe that's a good place to highlight the importance of Nssf by virtue of the fact that we have social and cultural structures that almost make the elderly dependent on their families. And that doesn't have to be the case if one puts good investments in their working years.
Well, I think it gets worse. It gets worse because when I look at, in a very broad perspective, the saving culture of our people when they are working, it is something that is very, very regrettable.
It leaves a lot to be desired.
It leaves a lot to be desired. In fact, we don't feel nice about it. And this is particularly within the age bracket of when you start working and about 40 years. The so-called millennials, for example. The saving culture in this country is not nice. Pretty much unlike our neighbors, regrettably so. And therefore, we aim, first of all, as a fund, not only to sensitize, but to educate our young people on the need to save as soon as you start working. In fact, as soon as you start working, you should save as if you are retiring the following day. The following day. Because if you live large, there will be pain in old age. And you become a poor person. And that time, you know, your kids are overgrown, they have got their own families, you are left alone, and you have a lot of pain in old age.
And to be fair, even those children have their lives.
They have their own lives to lead and all that. And therefore, our general appeal as a fund is to tell our young people, those who are getting into the working environment early, after university or after the TVET level of education, to start saving early. Something like between 25 and 30% of their earnings, and tuck it away for old age. This is a general appeal to our people, because living large on mom and dad, you come to suffer in old age.
Later. And that is, of course, a good place to also just mention the fact that when one is young, they need to do that, but also to demystify, is Nssf purely for those who have formal employment?
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, the fund itself brings on board those who are in formal employment, You can join yourself, even from the informal sector. The total working population of this country is just like over 17 million Kenyans. Out of that global figure of about slightly over 17 million Kenyans, below 3 million people are in formal employment.
Right.
The others are either self-employed or the informal sector. Therefore, anybody who has some kind of earnings to save can actually come and become a member in Nssf. And that is what we would like to encourage. And in fact, that is why, in that spirit, the Act of 2013, which was revised, aimed to capture, to bring more and more Kenyans on board, particularly from the informal sector, and also contribute more beyond what we are doing at the moment. We are contributing minimally as contributors. That money, of course, so many years down the road, because of the time value for money, will become nothing.
Right.
So if we are paying what we are paying today, like 400 shillings per month, 15, 20 years
400
later, it will be like, 1 cent. And therefore, you go straight into poverty.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe just to understand the structure of Nssf and how it is run, we do know that you're the chair of the board. Maybe just give us an overview of the role that the board plays and how the whole structure of Nssf is.
The fund itself has a board of trustees, and it has management. That is a very generic way of organizing in the corporate world. The nature of our board is such that we have what we call a tripartite board because of the very nature of the people who contribute. First and foremost, we have 2 members from KOTU, because KOTU, brings all the unions together.
Correct.
Those are the workers. So we have 2 members in the board. We have another 2 board members or trustees from the Federation of Kenya Employers. The employers who employ these workers. So they have 2 members also. Those are 4. And then the balance of 5 are independent and from government. For example, we have the PS in Treasury. We have the PS Ministry of Labor, under who the wider docket of Social Security comes. And we have the government itself. And I become the chair. So it's a membership of about 9, board trustees. And the managing trustee, the top man in management, who we refer to as the managing trustee or the CEO, is also a board member, but with no voting rights.
With no voting rights.
Yeah.
Okay, and that, of course, gives us now the assurance and security that people's money is safe and it is well taken care of, because this is not being run by an individual, but it is being run by a board that sits down to ensure that the money is put into good use.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there are checks and balances. I'm happy to say that as I approach 1 year, the chair of the board since I was appointed last year in June, I have had a very, very beautiful working relationship with all those board members.
Correct.
Very harmoniously working, a team of men and women. And any decision you have made has been through consensus. That is what is encouraged in the corporate world.
Absolutely.
The moment you get into the areas of we are voting and all that, you are starting to become a bit dysfunctional. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we do also know that the Nssf has a role that it's playing in the Big Four agenda. We know that the president has given us somewhat a vision for the government in the next 3 or 4 years or so, and one of them being in the area of affordable housing. What role is Nssf playing in that?
Maybe before I come to the Big Four, still on the board matters, the board itself is organized into various board committees. And these board committees become, therefore, the interface between the board itself and the management. So continuously, the board committees will engage with the management and they report back to the full forum of the board when convened. And that is how we are able to keep an eye on whether management is doing what they are mandated to do, which is a big issue in this country also. Yeah.
Okay, to the Big Four.
Now, coming back to the Big Four, our main focus, and I say our main focus at the moment, as people would expect, is housing. But I want to say that we are not focusing on housing because we are neophytes. We've been on issues housing as a trust, as a fund for many years. Indeed, when the president and the commander-in-chief announced about the Big Four, we felt so relieved because we already at it. As you know, we have assets in this country, and particularly in this city, for example, in the various estates and all that, which are really performing very well, and they have become a very, very good source of our revenue, on a daily basis. So we are already very experienced in that area of housing, and we more or less came on board on matters housing under the Big Four seamlessly. Without having to look like a startup, steps ahead. Yeah. And therefore, it is important for Kenyans to know that even as we speak here on matters housing, we are working very, very closely with the State Department on housing, on how we can actually team up, become part of the wider movement in providing affordable housing. And we are going to put in both the money and land for the construction of this affordable housing vision. So we are fully engaged, we are on board, fully supportive of that initiative. We have our own money as a fund and land also. But we are looking for areas where we can create synergy to move together as government.
Maybe just to give a clearer picture to Kenyans of what that looks like, because there's a lot of mystery that many may feel surrounding the affordable housing, and even with the new, with the tax that was being introduced by government, although it's still on hold. But what do you envision, and what does Nssf see in terms of providing affordable housing for Kenyans, and how that will work out?
The broad definition of affordable housing is any structure costing from about 600,000 Kenya shillings, say a one-bedroomed house, to a maximum of about 3 million. That is within our ability to provide, even as a fund. It is regrettable that some sectors in this country don't seem to capture this. I think having a decent shelter as you work, or even post-retirement, perhaps, is one of the biggest achievements to anybody.
And even to give
any person of decency and dignity and all that. I have worked for the 2 years in uniform in my previous life, and I never had this kind of offer coming from government. I think, therefore, we should get a little bit more serious and come on board and support the government on this. It is actually a gift, because I don't know where you can go anywhere in this country and buy a 3-bedroom house for 3 million shillings. You start with this city, for example. So for the government to have come up with this vision, I think we should all come on board as Kenyans, support it fully, drop all those pending issues about court and that, come on board. We are already on board ourselves because we know what it actually means to a human being to own shelter, among other things. So we are really at the vanguard in this initiative, and we are working very closely with the State Department for Housing as I speak on how we are going to team up and bring on board that which we have. They bring on board that which they have, like, for example, putting infrastructure on the land that we own so that we can move forward.
Okay, we do know
the end game for the fund at the end of all this, also because we are also investors on behalf of the contributors, is to have a return on that investment also. So whether that house will cost 600 or 3 million, there will be a return on that investment from the first point of view. And that is already accepted, and we are on board fully.
Okay. Now, one of the things that makes housing very, very expensive, particularly like you've mentioned in this city, is the cost of land and the cost of material and also labor to bring up these houses. Are there stopgap measures that maybe Nssf and government are taking to ensure that those are kept at an all-time low to make it affordable?
Those that you mentioned are very few. First, the issue of the cost of land in this country is arbitrary. It is not underpinned by any figure that you can actually do and work out and say this piece of land is so much. It is just a bit. It is purely speculative and all that. I was informed earlier this week that land in this country is the most expensive on the continent. So it's not based on anything. Number two, we have very, very old, perhaps archaic building codes that become a distraction to the construction of this affordable housing dream. So the government will have to do something about pushing aside some of those old building codes because they've been overtaken by the current technology today that we have. Again, the approval process between the time you say I'm going to construct, by the time you go through people like National Construction Authority, NEMA, the county governments, it may take anything from time 0 to maybe 3 years, for example. So the government will have to do something to fast track that process and come up with maybe a tweaking of the taxation regime also that we have in this country. All that hopefully under one clearing house, so that by the time you want to put up a structure here, within a month, all those processes have been overcome. In fact, in a recent project commissioned by the president here in Gara, I was told earlier this week again that before the end of this year, those houses will be complete, which is very, very encouraging. So that is what the government is doing, because it wants to provide and hand over these structures to the owners up to a maximum of, say, about half a million in the next 3-4 years.
3-4 years. All right. And
that is only doable if you collapse and cut out all these many bureaucracies. Yeah.
All right. Now, the financial books for Nssf are looking good, but a question is lingering on managers being in acting positions, including the CEO. What do you have to say about this?
Well, I don't think our numbers, our funds, our accounts are looking good because that just happened. It has taken a lot of effort, a lot of burning of midnight oil to eliminate and cut out some of the issues of the past, so-called legacy issues. As I'm sure Kenyans know, the fund itself, like many other funds, used to be the victims of all manner of deviance. So we are in the manner we are at the moment financially because of very prudent management and the stewardship by the current board, first and foremost. That there have not been substantive managers, and including the MT itself, is not really the fact that has contributed to
where the financials are today.
Exactly. But I would like to say that that has been the case, as you say. In fact, if you look at our current acting managing trustee, he has been at office for the last 5 years, since 2015.
Wow.
Now, this is somebody who is very hardworking. He has been there since 2015 in that acting capacity.
Why can't he be confirmed?
All our top managers, all of them, as I speak, are acting except one, and other managers below that. But what are we doing about it? Because that is not anything to write home about. We have embarked as a current board of trustees, as I speak, on the recruitment process, first and foremost, of the managing trustee, and it is work in progress. And we are going to deliver that before the end of this year. In fact, very soon, even by July. We are on it as we speak. Once we have a substantive managing trustee, we shall now work together and will be part of that recruitment team of the managers below him. That we are going to do between now and the end of this year. Beyond that, the current structure of the fund as we speak is old. In fact, it is a 2011 organogram. And you know, in job evaluation, jobs grow, jobs shrink. In fact, jobs also become obsolete. So at any one time, the structure that any organization has to be fit for purpose. We think, and we are convinced, that the current structure we have in Nssf is not fit for purpose. So as I speak again, it needs to be worked on, and we are working on it. In fact, again, by latest August this year, we will have a completely new structure that will be fit for purpose. And I am confident, and on behalf of my board of trustees, that bottom line, the state of our funds will even grow better, in leaps and bounds.
And once that is done, I'm sure then you're left with concentrating on the strategic focus for Nssf. What is the strategic focus for Nssf?
Well, it has been, and it still is, first and foremost, to provide social security. That's why we exist.
That's what you're there for.
That's what we are there for. For you to be able to provide to Kenyans a bespoke social security, infrastructure for our Kenyans beyond their working life, you have to grow the fund. We have to grow the fund. Currently, our fund is the largest in the country.
And in the
I don't want to disclose our net worth, but we are fairly wealthy also. But we aim to grow the fund even beyond that. And in my speech today, when we go to the wider AGM, I'll be talking about where we have come from over the last 3 years in terms of the growth of our bottom line. So in order to provide that, therefore, much desired social security aspect of Kenyans beyond their working life, the fund has to grow. The growth of the fund is a function of many things. Number one, very prudent management, very prudent investments, where you get maximum returns. And of course, the unlocking of this Act of 2013 will also become key, because we hope, and we are going to have it unlocked this year also, as I will speak in the AGM meeting today. Our contributions will go from where they are at the moment, which are the lowest in East Africa, to something slightly higher, which is what you know. So the fund not only will become larger, and of course we will attract more contributors, particularly when you focus on the informal sector, that a lot of people out there are yet to join any pension fund, which is regrettable.
Absolutely.
We are only doing about 14%. Even there's a huge latitude, which is dismal.
Yeah,
and highly regrettable, I can tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as we wind up, we're out of time, but we live in a country that is very suspicious, especially of institutions that run huge funds. And like you've mentioned, Nssf is pretty well placed in terms of having the funds. What assurance will you give the members? And not all of them will make it for the AGM, but what would you speak to Kenyans who are members and maybe prospective members of the safety of the funds?
Well, let me put it this way. Our fund is 54 years old this year, established by Session Paper number 10 of 1965. So we are 54 years old this year. We started off with a very small number of contributors. There were about 70. Regrettably, they were all men. The law did not allow women to do so that time. Things have moved on. Between that time and today, the fund has gone through various evolutions, some of them regrettable, others to speak of proudly. But I want to say that the current board of trustees that we have today, and which I chair, was created by this new act. So a lot of mistakes of the past were dealt with. I used to hear, I don't know because I was not there, that there used to be a lot of political interference. People would just go in and put their figures in the cookie jar and all that. I want to assure Kenyans
the money is safe.
That the current board of trustees, na mimi nikiwa mwenyekiti, none of that is going to happen. We are the fiduciaries of the contributors. We are there because they are the people we answer to. Okay? And the buck stops with the board of trustees.
Thank you very much.
So there is not going to be any form of interference, which I can assure you.
Okay.
And the Kenyans out there.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. We're out of time. That's Chairman of Nssf Board General Retired Dr. Julius Karangi. Thank you for joining us this morning, and we're wishing you a good AGM today, later on, as you address those who are going to be in. But that also spells the winding up of the show. And, well, Trix, it's been good being here at the KICC.
Yeah, a different and interesting change of pace, having the show from here. And of course, the AGM is going to go on from now on, but this wraps up Morning Express. But I'm curious, Michael Gitonga is on the Nairobian, and he is telling